I knew exactly who wouldn't stand up for me the instant the president did. The acclaim rose through marble columns and polished wood like a tide, dignified and purposeful. I didn't have to smile as I strode ahead in full military uniform. They didn't deserve the recognition for what I had constructed when no one was looking. My name reverberated throughout the room. Elise Monroe, Staff Sergeant. Then it took place. He got up. As I got closer to the dais, the U.S. President stood up and nodded. Then came a sea of ironed suits and gleaming shoes. The cameras flashed. One decisive moment was evident and indisputable. I could feel my phone vibrating softly in my jacket pocket at that moment. Quiet but adamant. I was already aware of that. I finally peeked later that night, back in my hotel room. Hold on, Ryan. You could have said anything, Chloe, the real president. I kind of botched up. Well, a screenshot of the live feed with a caption. Whoa. Still wearing my military boots, unlaced but not taken off, I leaned back against the headboard. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. When I looked at the audience earlier that day, I noticed the chairs. An entire row marked, Family, Monroe, untouched. There were no coats draped over the backs. No bags on the ground. There was no attempt to act as though they would ever arrive. As if they had never intended to be proud, not even a seat was set aside for display. They were upset because they had not received an invitation. When I ironed my ROTC shirt, those same people rolled their noses. Who chuckled when I said boot camp. Who referred to my aspirations as a phase. They were upset because I had not reserved a seat for them. Allow them to be angry. The room represented me. They didn't. When Chloe eventually spoke it aloud, I was 16. Not whispered, not behind my back. It was sharp, clear, and loud enough to reverberate from the locker. She is merely acting like a soldier. End the day by giving her a doll. They chuckled. I didn't. I looked down at my boots, which were correctly knotted but scuffed from drill practice. I continued after that. Straight, neither slow nor fast. My ROTC jacket was tucked away on the kitchen chair at home. With her washbasket in hand, Mom walked by. She whispered, "Perhaps this will teach you some discipline." I didn't answer. To prevent the jacket from wrinkling on the floor, I just lifted it off the chair. I participated in the Why Service Matters essay competition that year. I wrote about legacy, about serving even when no one salutes, and about Grandpa's medals in a shoebox. I left the certificate on the kitchen counter after taking second place statewide. A coffee ring appeared next morning. "Well, it's not the New York Times," Mom commented after taking a quick look at it. The awards dinner was empty. Cheer regionals were for Chloe. "An essay thing," Ryan added. "You mean it?" Dad returned to discussing the weather. I went by myself. Wore a dress from a thrift store and borrowed flats. My name was called. I thanked them, grinned, and walked away. The story was pinned to the bulletin board back at school. Nobody knew it belonged to me. Graduation is something I recall. When I entered the parking lot, I noticed Mom's vehicle. My chest rose. I reapplied my lip balm and straightened my gown. However, the automobile was unoccupied when I approached. Across the street, she had taken Chloe to cheerleading tryouts. I walked home by myself after sitting on the curb with my diploma. I didn't want to be praised by then. I simply didn't want to be forgotten. I went to school once in my uniform my senior year. Chloe almost stumbled when she rolled her eyes so sharply. "I'm still dressing like an army," she stated. I glanced at the ribbon I had sewed around my collar after glancing at her. "If it doesn't come off, it's not dressy." She remained silent. She didn't. They all believed that I would outgrow the uniform, the routine, and the pressure to succeed. 3 states away, in a town with more pine than people, was my first duty post. I quietly packed my belongings. Nothing except a bus ticket and a weather app, no car journey, no send-off. Nobody inquired about my destination. Nobody even looked up the base name on Google. I texted the family group chat the day I got there. A picture of me with my hair pushed back in exhaustion and a half-forced, half-proud smile. It was left on the scene by Ryan. 2 hours later, Chloe said, "9 few, Is that actual gear or something like ROTC stuff? I sent a thumbs up after typing out a thorough explanation and then deleting it. Mud, perspiration, and early mornings that didn't care who was looking were all part of that first year. I cleaned guns till I could smell CLP in my sleep, and I ran until my arches ached. Sharper than any conversation I'd had at home, the uniforms were folded. Nobody inquired as to whether my blisters had broken or how I was sleeping. I mailed gifts from the PX for Christmas, including a mug that read, "Best Grandma Ever," despite the fact that Mom wasn't one. Overpriced and bubble-wrapped are Ryan's novelty socks and Chloe's favorite snacks. Thanks, I suppose, but only Chloe responded. Random, but alright, haha. That note was the only one, so I preserved it, not because it was sentimental. I was deployed abroad the next spring. Silence in another continent. The family FaceTimed me on my 24th birthday, but not for me. It was Aiden's moment to blow out the candles. The telephone was held up to the dessert. "Oh, Elise, you're still in Japan, right?" Chloe's voice replied. "In any case, greet Aiden." The camera flipped. I gave a wave. Nobody returned the wave. I stopped picking up after that. Birthdays turned into peaceful evenings spent drinking coffee from the vending machine and whatever was left in the mess hall. I began referring to them as Tuesdays. The call that altered my record then arrived. A medevac. Our radio went off. I managed fallback without any margin or maps. Because of it, people survived. The commendation came unsigned and folded. Merely a database number. However, it was genuine. I kept it a secret. A group chat was not texted. Not interested in another cool or funny. The award was pinned above my bunk. Velcro. Not a frame. No words. "You don't talk about home often," my roommate remarked, staring at me. I gave a shrug. I have nothing fresh to say. However, I sensed a sense of calm within. Not exactly pride. Something more subdued. Similar to the realization that you never needed a door to open in the first place when it closes. On a Wednesday, it arrived. One of those days that nobody ever remembers. Cloudy. Wet. I entered from the base, leaving light marks on the hallway floor from my boots. It was blazing in my inbox's upper corner. Department of Defense. Notification of National Commendation. I initially believed it to be admin spam. I nearly put it in the archives. Then I noticed that the second line contained my name. Elise Monroe, Staff Sergeant Audacious. Capitalized. It didn't appear to be me. It was weighted, not because it was inaccurate. Actual weight. The kind that doesn't request consent. I gazed at the PDF after opening the file. Serif typeface in black. There is a slight gold seal watermark in the corner. Clipped earnestness interwoven with formal words. In appreciation of outstanding leadership under duress and ongoing service in this country's defense. I read it 3 times. It was because I believed it, not because I didn't. For reasons I still don't understand, I printed it on thick paper and folded it once, twice, then a third time. The emblem was precisely creased. I put it beside my mug on the counter. Hours passed before I touched it once more. I opened the family group chat that evening. Last message, Chloe with a mimosa on a beach. Living the dream, Ryan had said. Mom's response had been heartfelt. I spent a whole minute looking at the screen. "I'll be flying to Washington, D.C., I typed. "Next month. The Department of Defense is honoring me. I thought you ought to be aware." Almost instantly, 3 dots emerged. "Chloe is adorable. Remember to give the punch bowl a salute. Ryan is cool. Biden might tweet you." Mom remained silent. A simple thumbs up. A gray bubble. Just a single tap. That was it. Long after the screen had dimmed, I continued to stare at it. It was similar to having someone pass by your open door without looking inside. Intentionally. I first locked and then unlocked my phone. Even though I had committed every word to memory, I nonetheless read the thread again. It was painless. It didn't sit quietly like it used to, but it also didn't. They had no pride. They were irritated. They were upset at having been excluded from a moment they had never contributed to creating. I poured the tea, waited for it to cool, and then poured it out without touching it. The letter remained on the counter, folded. After pressing it flat and rubbing my hand over the seal, I said to the room, "They might not receive an invitation. It wasn't retaliation. It wasn't rebellion. Just a possibility." Said aloud for the first time. Although they weren't brand new, the sneakers I wore that morning were clean. Hand-polished, double-knotted laces. Above my heart, where the stitching had begun to unravel, I stood in my tiny hotel room and pinned the final ribbon. Repetition, not weariness. I neglected to look in the mirror. I realized by now that appearances were unimportant. It was what I carried. Outside, the pale spring light slowly woke up Washington, D.C. The non-warming kind simply shows. The walkways were lined with cherry blossoms as if they were the only thing there was. The ceremony space appeared as though it had been there all along. Columns made of stone. Arches that are high. You could feel the silence in your jaw. The weight of well-pressed history and polished ancient wood hung in the air inside. Lo, an organ muttered. That type of music only serves to highlight the amount of available space. My nameplate's edge was repaired by an assistant. My cuff was polished by another. Nothing to say. Simply move. 2 minutes, murmured a soft voice from the corridor. I moved toward the light. In front of me, rows of chairs extended in crisp, spotless uniforms. A placard with 5 rows in the front left. Family, Monroe. A total of 6 white seats. Empty. The fabric isn't even wrinkled. There were no slung jackets. No bags. There were no programs that folded open. No signs of presence. Not even the slacker type that claim we intended to arrive late. Just the ideal lack of presence. And I remembered right then, before anyone applauded. My graduation from high school. The name rang out. The forward step. After lunch, they never went back to that chair. I smiled too broadly for the yearbook picture. Too much time. The area on stage next to me. In certain cases, the absence speaks louder than the presence ever could. There was a distinct formality in the announcer's voice. For Staff Sergeant Elise Monroe's unflinching dedication to duty and outstanding service leadership under duress. Cheers. Not crazy. Not cozy. Simply full. Then there was a slight but firm shift. The president got up. Others came after them. Rows are getting up. The tapping of shoes. Clapping hands. Silence was the foundation of a wall of cacophony. I took a step forward. Measured actions. Even on the shoulders. With every breath, the weight of the metal pin in the box inside my left pocket increased. He held out his hand. Not a flourish. Just some clarity. I gave it a shake. I saw the nod of approval as closure as well as acknowledgement. I turned after that. The family row was once again apparent from the stage. Unaltered. Continuing to act as though it was reserved. Still holding out hope that someone may show up. However, nobody did. Marcus, the photographer across the aisle, raised his camera. Avoid making eye contact. Not a wave. Just concentrate. As I passed the vacant chairs, he tilted the shot. Click. A faint sound. However, I sensed it. Such as the last punctuation in a sentence I had been drafting since I was 15. I didn't request to view the picture. Didn't pretend. Didn't say anything. I was certain he had it. The world witnessed the moment when the seat was reserved for those who had never decided to rise. The seats remained motionless. However, I didn't either. I saw Grace as soon as I stepped down. 3 rows back, she took a seat. Face still, hands folded calmly. She didn't grin. Did not give a longer clap than everybody else. She simply looked into my eyes and nodded slightly. It was sufficient. And for once, I didn't look around the room to see who was missing. I was aware beforehand. The group photo was not posted by me. The handshake, no. Not the medal. Not even the president. Only one picture. Me in the middle of my stride. Whole outfit. Straighten your back. Keep your head up. Passing 6 white, immaculately untouched chairs. No caption was included. Don't use hashtags. No justification. I put it online. The app was then closed. The messages began within hours. One of my undergraduate professors made a remark. "I'm proud of you, Elise. I always thought you had a unique quality." After that, I recall an old neighbor of yours helping my husband shovel snow before school. "You did all of this, didn't you realize it?" And without any fanfare, later that night. A remark made by my first international team leader. Continuing to lead in silence. Before the rest of the world noticed, some of us did. I didn't answer. Nothing was liked or pinned. Knowing that I had been spotted before the picture was sufficient. My phone buzzed at around 10 o'clock. "Ryan, we could have been informed that it was this large. I kind of screwed up. After 5 minutes, Mom has been crying. I assumed you would include us." I turned the screen down. The voicemail followed. Mom. Clipped breathily, as if she had hurried to say it before dissuading herself. "Elise, we were embarrassed by you. Don't you know that? Family doesn't operate like this." The award was not mentioned. No interest in the ceremony. Simply being excluded from a moment they never created is a disappointment. I launched the Notes app, entered a single line. Family is one of them. Or it doesn't. I took a moment to sit with it. After then, it was erased. Not all truths are meant to be shared. Some are merely for proximity. I took a cup of tea and strolled out onto the balcony the following morning. Overnight, the picture became viral. Added to tribute reels and slideshows after being shared and republished. All of stuff was irrelevant. The fact that I hadn't had to speak was what counted. For me, it was the picture. The chairs were visible to everyone. Noticed who wasn't present. And continued to stand. I took up my phone once more. Without touching the reposts, I scanned through them. Then stopped. A fresh remark. "Megan." I can see it now in just 3 words. I didn't respond. I did, however, read it again. On the patio, the breeze moved a little. One fresh branch of the bonsai next to me curled toward the window as it caught the early light. It takes years for some growth. And still makes a silent entrance. I muttered, "Not to anyone," while holding the mug between my palms. Not for impact. Just because the time demanded it. They simply don't belong in some rooms. Nevertheless, the room continued to stand. After that, I relaxed, allowed the steam to rise, and stopped thinking about them. The bonsai came in a simple ceramic container. Not a ribbon. Not a card. There was only a silent delivery at my door. Uncertain whether it was an error, I opened it gently. Inside a neatly squared-off, folded note. "This began the day you departed for Okinawa. Now it's yours. Grace." The tree was modest but purposeful. Its limbs were reaching and disciplined, and its trunk curved gently in an arc. I delicately slid a finger along one limb. There was a new cut. Still recovering. I once heard Grace say, "You prune it hard. To teach it strength, not to punish it." Like water on stone, the words reverberated, familiar but fresh. I put it next to the window. Allow the light to discover it. A long time passed before I touched it again. There was a knock that night. I had no expectations. Megan, Chloe's wife, was standing there with a glass Tupperware covered in a worn checkered towel when I answered the door. "You liked the rice cake I made," she remarked. She spoke carefully. "Not sorry. Just the truth." I took a step back and nodded. "There's no need to talk just yet." My tiny kitchen table was where we sat. I'd been having alone dinners there for years. I started eating the rice cake. It had a bit too much sweetness. A bit thick. Just like I recalled. Megan glanced at the metal box that had not been opened, the folded uniform still slung across the chair, and the framed picture from the ceremony. I had no idea it looked that way. Her voice was hardly audible. I didn't respond. She took the picture and gazed at it for a while. "You were there all the time? And you were never seen by us?" The final syllable caused her voice to break. I refrained from crying. I gave her permission. Afterward, we relocated to the porch. With its serene, well-balanced silhouette, the bonsai captured the final rays of the day. Megan's hand went to her mug. "I was mistaken about you." I examined the bonsai. Next, at her. Many things flourish when they are allowed to grow. Our mugs clinked together. Not a single toast. No words. Just two people sitting at the same table at last, their steam curling. At first, I didn't hang the medals. For weeks, they sat peacefully in their velvet boxes next to unpaid energy bills and the bonsai, which now leaned slightly toward the window as if it had a place there. I went out with them one calm Sunday. Not to make a good impression. Not to be critical. Merely to give them room to breathe. I put two framed pictures above the bookcase, not centered or highlighted, but there, as if I had finally arrived. That morning, when I was watering the bonsai, I stopped when I noticed a new branch growing through. Still sensitive. It is still learning how to maintain its shape. I muttered, I used to think proof would be enough. However, they never sought evidence. Performance was what they desired. And I was no longer performing. I sat on the back porch that evening. Below, the waters buzzed softly and unconcernedly. As if to avoid waking me, the light curved down the floor. No camera. Not a crowd. No names to impress. Only the air. As well as myself. I'm still here. I shut my eyes. I didn't consider who wasn't present. I didn't grab my phone. Not wondering what they would say now if they saw it. I have been down the aisle before. Standing in that light already. I shouted out loud. The president stood, not with pride, but with peace. However, I didn't require him to. All I had to do was show up. I had to.